Welcome, you're watching Vox News, your daily evening news with Rita Kamkumo. Our headlines today: Ivorian Prime Minister Amadou Coulibaly is back home just in time to prepare for the October presidential election. Hundreds of protesters demand the release of Mali's leading opposition figure, Soumaïla Cissé, 100 days after he was kidnapped by jihadists. Coronavirus cost Africa's travel and tourism industry $55 billion. The African Union warns some airlines may not survive the pandemic. Our top story today: after months of being away, Ivorian Prime Minister Amadou Coulibaly, the governing party's candidate for the October presidential election, returned to Abidjan on Thursday afternoon after spending 2 months in France for medical reasons.
All means have been used to express sympathy, support and love for me. To conclude, Mr. President, I will say in return, I love you. I am back to take my place alongside the President to continue the work of development and construction of our country, the Ivory Coast.
L'œuvre de développement et de construction de notre pays, la Côte d'Ivoire.
Coulibaly highlighted that President Alassane Ouattara, who called him day and night, he said, had kept him informed of every issue ahead of the presidential vote.
Within the party that was formed to support him, it's truly a family that is setting off again to win this 2020 election in October.
The Prime Minister fled to France on the 2nd of May for a medical checkup after undergoing a heart transplant in 2012, according to the authorities.
He did not suffer an extraordinary disease. It was an ordinary disease due to his age, so there was nothing extraordinary. The only exceptional thing is that he is running for president, so it was an ordinary illness in an exceptional context.
Now that the Prime Minister is back, presidential party executives intend to kickstart and launch the electoral campaign. Ivory Coast honored on Thursday the 14 soldiers who lost their lives in the terrorist attack perpetrated by jihadists on the 10th of June in Kafolo by holding a ceremony at a military camp in Abidjan.
They made the supreme sacrifice of their lives to protect the Ivory Coast from the barbarity of those who, like vampires, aspire only for bloodshed.
The Ivorian soldiers received posthumous medals at the memorial service attended by President Alassane Ouattara and the families of the victims.
My husband sacrificed himself for the homeland. You can't do anything against God's will. It is God's will, so we'll try hard to make ourselves strong to be able to overcome it.
It was the first jihadist attack led by Islamist extremists on the Ivorian soil in more than 4 years. In Mali's capital city Bamako, hundreds of protesters demanded on Thursday the release of leading opposition figure Soumaïla Cissé, who was kidnapped by jihadists 100 days ago.
This day is special for us for the simple reason that we've been without Soumaïla Cissé for 100 days. 100 days deprived of the light of our model of the political balance in Mali that Soumaïla Cissé has represented for more than 2 decades.
Thursday's demonstration brought together political figures and activists of all political spectrum. Last month, embattled President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta gave Malian citizens news of Cissé, stating that he is still alive and that efforts are underway to secure his liberation quickly.
Of course, I'm still hopeful when the President of the Republic says that today Soumaïla was spotted. Well, when the President says that Soumaïla has been spotted, I'm really sure that Soumaïla is alive.
Cissé's political party, the Union for the Republic and Democracy, had called for this rally independently of the opposition coalition that brought thousands of Malians to the streets twice last June to demand the departure of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. In Chad, the parliamentary election, which has been repeatedly delayed, is now scheduled for the 24th of October 2021. The Electoral Commission reported on Thursday that the legislative election, which has been delayed 5 times since its due date in 2015, will begin about 6 months after the presidential election, scheduled for the 11th of April. Although his supporters prevail in the current National Assembly, President Idris Deby Itno, in office since 1990, repeatedly postponed the poll, citing security issues posed by Nigerian Boko Haram fighters, a lack of funds, and the coronavirus pandemic. On the economic front, the African Union reported on Thursday that Africa's travel and tourism industry had lost the equivalent of $55 billion due to the closure of borders to limit the spread of coronavirus. African Union Commissioner Amani Abu Zaid stated that some African airlines may not survive the pandemic as the vital tourism sector has been badly hit by coronavirus lockdowns that put air traffic on hold for more than 3 months. A handful of African countries reopened their borders last week, such as Zambia, Sierra Leone, and Senegal, which has announced the resumption of international flights from the 15th of July. In Sierra Leone, a doctors' organization urged its members on Tuesday to go on an indefinite strike by suspending coronavirus patients' care in protest at the lack of medical resources and unpaid bonuses. The Sierra Leone Medical and Dental Association, which has around 350 members, said the protest will be launched within 24 hours. This strike marks an escalation in a dispute between the government and doctors who denounce a lack of protection for medical staff and alleged misuse of funds intended for the COVID-19 response in the country. Since the beginning of the outbreak, about 20% of the country's total coronavirus expenditure, or nearly $850,000, went to the purchase of 30 new vehicles and 230 motorbikes for officials, against $85,000 for procuring 8 ventilators in total for medical equipment. In Cameroon, the death of Anglophone journalist Samuel Wozizi still stirs controversy. The National Union of Journalists announced on Thursday the confiscation of the body of the late reporter, who died in custody in August last year in Buea, in the southwest Anglophone region, whose remains have yet to be returned to his family. The Journalists Association accuses the authorities of keeping his body to hide the alleged physical abuse that the journalist suffered during his secret detention after the army claimed that he died as a result of severe sepsis. Wozizi was arrested for criticizing the government's handling of the Anglophone crisis on the 2nd of August 2019 and had been detained until his death on the 19th of August, according to the authorities. However, his death was only announced in early June 2020, first by the press and then by the army. The journalists' union laments that a month after the announcement of his death, no action has yet been taken by the authorities to shed light on the circumstances of his passing. In Kenya, marathon runner Florence Chepsoi is making headlines with doping accusations. The anti-doping agency of Kenya reported on Thursday that the 36-year-old athlete is facing prison for presenting false medical documents to support her doping case in October 2017. She appeared in court on Thursday, charged with the offense after she was banned for 2 years in 2017 for using performance-boosting drug prednisolone. Her case will be heard on the 13th of August. If found guilty, she will become the first Kenyan athlete to be jailed under the National Anti-Doping Agency's jurisdiction. Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune announced on Thursday the return of the remains of Algerian fighters who were killed over a century ago during the colonial era.
Within a few hours, Algerian military planes will fly in from France and land at the Ourari Boumediene International Airport with the remains of 24 members of the popular resistance.
Some of the remains belong to leaders and key figures of the resistance movement who were killed in the 19th century fighting against France, which occupied and ruled the country for 132 years. In Botswana, the Wildlife Department reported on Thursday the mysterious death of hundreds of elephants in the wildlife-rich Okavango Delta.
Up to date, 275 elephant carcasses that have been verified of the 356 that are reported in the northern part of Botswana within the Okavango region that are due to an unknown cause. Which the government is currently investigating. The team has already collected a number of samples that have been assessed both locally in some labs and also some being shipped to laboratories in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and in Canada.
The Wildlife Department ruled out poaching as a possible cause for the elephant's death, alleging that their tusks were found intact.
It's at this stage it's difficult to really tell what could be the cause of the mortality. We have eliminated from the local labs the possibility of anthrax being the cause of this mortality, but there's still a lot of infectious diseases and potentially other toxins that are being still investigated by the laboratory samples that have been collected. We think at this juncture is not poaching because all the carcasses that have been identified are identified intact with ivory, and there is no ivory missing, and clearly that suggests that whatever the mortality might not be having the intention of really harvesting ivory from these.
Similar deaths were first reported in May when the authorities found 12 carcasses in just a week in 2 villages in the northwest of the country. Botswana has the world's largest elephant population, estimated to be around 135,000. That's it for today. Thank you for watching Vox News.